Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of ECH Postgame Live. This one after a 3-1 loss to the Toronto Maple Leafs as the Kraken close out one of the longer homestands of the season and have one game to go until we hit the Four Nations break. And this game, I thought, fairly decent effort from the Kraken. I think you could just throw this one into the category of times that the Kraken have just run into a team that is better than them, more skilled than them, and that was the difference in the score. I think there are, of course, different things the Kraken did well, different things they did poorly, and we can break those down that kind of contributed to the loss. But overall, not disappointed with the effort, just little bits of execution and then facing a team that just is better than the group of players the Kraken have. And I think that was ultimately the difference in this one. But before we dive into chat, I want to thank our wonderful sponsor, Queen Anne Beer Hall, right up here, who has another location coming. I am so excited to check it out. It's going to be the hall on Occidental. It's going to be right across the street from T-Mobile Park. And that'll open in May, and they're going to have, they're like kind of renovating the place. They're going to have a whole bunch of cool things as part of that. They're going to have like a quick service bar for people like coming through. They're going to have like online ordering, lots of stuff. So if you're checking out Mariners games, of course, the summer's coming up, make sure to check out the hall on Occidental once that is open. But let's dive right into chat here. And we got a couple super chats to start things off here. So we'll start with this one from Light. I know people won't agree, but I thought that was a genuinely good game by the Kraken. I thought they were the better team for the vast majority of it. I wouldn't go that far. I still think the Leafs outplayed the Kraken in this one, and they were the better team. But on the curve of Seattle Kraken games and efforts, I think this season anyway, I think this one ranks decently high. And so I understand where you're coming from there, Light. Like, this was not a bad effort by the Kraken. I think if the Kraken played tonight the way they did against Detroit, this is a lot uglier. If they play the way they did against Calgary, I think it's a lot uglier. And so, excuse me, well, I don't think the Kraken had the better of the play. I do think it was a decent effort from the group, and it could have been a lot worse, given the Kraken's defensive miscues that they have had. It was, I think I've just checked the money puck deserved to win meter, which is certainly not the be all end all, but Kraken at 27%, and they've been around there really the last 3 or so games. And so, I think it's just a matter of facing a better team, and like they put the effort in, they just couldn't get it done execution wise. Super chat here from Schultz. Power play looked lost early on. Refs not fans of the Kraken since the Flames game. Which Kraken players are getting on the plane with the Leafs? We'll start with the power play. And man, I know the power play early that you're talking about. That was a rough one for the Kraken. They get outshot 3-0 on their own power play, which is never good. And then also, and that doesn't include the shorthanded breakaway from Mitch Marner that thankfully Joey Daccord was able to kind of get the angle for Marner to send that one wide. But just a brutal looking power play. And Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews both kill penalties for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And they are both so dangerous out there because they're always looking for those drop passes, the plays that you make around your own blue line to try and get things set up. They are just hunting around there, waiting for you to make a mistake. And yeah, Matty Beniers made a mistake there, and Mitch Marner turned into a breakaway. Power play definitely left some room for improvement on this one. And every time that Marner and Matthews were out there, it just felt more dangerous for the Leafs than it did for the Kraken, really. As for the refs, like, again, I don't think, first of all, I think they benefited. The officiating in the Detroit game, I thought was kind of, bad both ways, but the Kraken benefited from it a lot. I mean, the missed trip on the right before the Shane Wright goal, and then Brandon Tanev with an epic flop that they fell for in that one. So I definitely don't think it was slanted away from the Kraken. I don't think it was slanted away from the Kraken in this one. I mean, they were calling it really tight early on in this one, but they did it both ways. So I just, the officiating, I really hope everyone is just ready to drop that. Because this is not the reason the Kraken are losing at all. And I don't know that even, I feel like they've actually benefited from the officiating the last couple games at some key times. As for which Kraken players are getting on the plane with the Leafs, I don't think any this soon, but you never know with the Four Nations break coming up, and teams might be looking to make their move soon. I mean, if anyone, it's going to be Brandon Tanev. I don't think it's time for a Yanni Gourde trade yet, given the injury. Brandon Tanev would be the only one potentially. Super chat here from Milo. Joey Point, Jolie goal watch is back on. Yes, another point for Joey Daccord, his second assist of the season, getting an assist on the Kraken's lone goal of the game. And I love seeing that from Joey, and setting the new Kraken franchise record for most assists and I guess most points by extension in a season. So happy for Joey Daccord on that one. And I mean, it still feels wild that he had no points going into this season, given how many games he started last year and how he likes to play the puck. And yeah, Jolie goal watch back on. Kraken, I think, just need a lead. You know, the way they've been playing, they've digging themselves into holes and then having to come back. They need a late lead. They need the game script to go a little different for Joey to really have a chance. But looking forward to it when that day comes. And I say when, not if. Joey's going to get a goal at some point. Becca, it's super unprofessional of national broadcasters not even try to learn player names. Of course, being in the building tonight, I wasn't able to watch the national broadcast. Heard the negative things as usual, but yeah, which names did they not get right? Because that I didn't hear or see, just because I didn't have the chance to watch the broadcast, which, you know, maybe was for the best. But let me know in chat there, Becca, what names they struggled with. But that is something that every broadcast should get correct. It's the basic level of research, that's for sure. Oh, McMahon, over and over and over. I mean, that one is so many times all the names. The McMahon one is tough. If it only went in one direction, if they just kept calling McMahon and not the other way around, I mean, I think that's a little disrespectful. But you know, having a McCann and a McMahon in the game can be a little tough. Like, you know, I feel for him there. Oh, McCann was McMahon. Oh yeah, it was McMahon. Okay, McMahon, or McCain, or McMahon, and then Montour, Barakoski. Oof, Barakoski. All right, that one's rough. That one's really rough. I'm not gonna defend them for that one. Montour. Oh boy. Okay. God bless them trying to pronounce Stetska. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, the McMahon one is kind of easy to confuse, but yeah, the Montour, and then Barakoski, I think, is the worst that I've seen in here. So yeah, sorry everybody who had to watch that one. Shame that couldn't be like a road game for a live commentary or something, so you guys can mute that. All right, Luke, it was a massive awkward silence when we scored. Interesting. Yeah, gotta love those national broadcasts, those ESPN broadcasts. And everyone, sorry, my throat's bugging me just a little bit, so sorry if my voice goes out or if I'm coughing a little bit. Voice just kind of worn out. I was talking a lot during the game. Scrolling back up to the top of chat here. Excuse me. This one from Bryce. Disappointed in the loss, but always fun watching my favorite Kraken. Oh, there it is. Yeah, Jared McMahon and Brandon Montour. Okay, Bryce talking about that as well. And then B talking about Joey's second NHL assist. Again, love that for him. One of the positives out of this game. CJ feeling a bit of ennui after this one. Yeah, that's understandable at this point of the season. I think there's kind of just an air of that around this team. And so I understand where you're coming from there, CJ. It's, I think the Four Nations break is at least well-timed, where it's going to give us some time, maybe take a break from this team and what they're doing, and let everyone kind of take a break. And I think by the time it's over, we'll all miss them. We'll want them back. But, it is getting a little bit tiresome right now, I think. Shano, right, with the pitiful power play, unacceptable. It definitely did kind of sap the momentum at that point in the game. Jenna, we are just not a good hockey team. I mean, I think that's not wrong. The Kraken are just not a good team this season. And this Blue-White Flame, I'm just tired. Yeah, I think a lot of us kind of are at this point. And yeah, I mean, watching this game was just kind of another reminder. They can give the effort. I think they actually gave one of their closer to 60-minute efforts. They're just, they're not as good as some of these other teams in the league. Jenna not converting on that 6-on-4 was brutal. I mean, they had their chances 6-on-4 with the goalie pulled at least. They put on a push as they always do, but, they're too little too late. Shano, right, asking why has Dunn regressed this year, and as Light has done, hasn't regressed this year. Yeah, I don't know that he's really regressed this year. I think he's still one of the top, as Light says, one of the top offensive D in the league. Like, I think he's still played well. The one area of Vince Dunn's game that I think has gotten worse is the turnovers in his own zone, and especially the unforced ones where there's not really anybody right on him, but he'll throw a puck right at a defender when you're like wondering, okay, what is he looking at there? And I think that has gotten a little bit worse this season, or maybe a lot worse depending on how you want to look at it. But I think that just might be an effect of him just trying to do too much. And I think there are some guys on this team, Brandon Montour you could throw in there, that given the lack of scoring, especially from the forwards, maybe some of the more offensive D are just trying to do too much right now. And I understand the impulse, but sometimes it leads to turnovers like that. Let's see. Kraken Queen, we'll go with Steve. The refs were awful in this game for both sides. I feel the boys got a little distracted complaining to them and got in a couple bad spots because of it. Again, I think they called it tight early on. There were a couple really soft calls both ways. But I brought the comment up because I think, as far as the Kraken players complaining about it, it did seem to kind of get in their heads a little bit. And I think since the Calgary game, there's been this level of frustration from the guys that I think maybe they've been a little likely to think that some of the calls that don't go their way, even though they're balanced out in a game, get a little bit more frustrated by it. And we saw it with Chandler Stevenson after the Leafs' second goal, that power play goal. He's in the box for the double minor. Excuse me. And he slammed his stick right when the referee skated by to go give, something to the scorekeeper, slammed his stick right on the glass. And you could hear it all the way from up in the press box. And I don't know that I've ever seen a player do that while being in the box. The ref walks by and just bam, stick right on the glass at the referee. And I think he's lucky he didn't get another penalty for that, given how loud it was. And we all kind of noticed it, but it did tell me that, okay, maybe this is kind of getting under guys' skin here. And I think that's something, the players just kind of can't let happen. Kraken Queen CPA went wild when they announced Joey's assist. Best part of the night for sure. I love the crowd reaction from that. They loved it for Joey. And I love how much this crowd gets behind Joey Daccord. Byron, who's great? John, Allison, Piper, JT, Edzo. We are so very blessed. Absolutely. These games, I think more than anything, just make you appreciate the broadcast crew that the Kraken have, game in, game out. Not every team is blessed with a crew like that. CJ Bjorkstrand becoming an enforcer, excuse me, on this squad. Yeah, he's fought twice in the last month or so, and against guys much bigger than he is. I mean, Benoit, who he dropped the gloves with, 4 inches taller, and I believe 36 pounds heavier than Oliver Bjorkstrand. He held his own. That's really impressive. I think we're Dylan and the others are getting a chance to talk to Oliver Bjorkstrand probably right about now after the game. So curious what Bjorky has to say about being in that fight against somebody much bigger than he is. Let's see. Let's see. Bryce Stolars is a stud. Decent push at the end. Need to convert on the power play. Yeah, Stolars did have a really good game. He gets first star in this game. And coming back from injury, good game from Anthony Stolars. He was just tracking the puck super well. There were a lot of shots that came in on him from the point with a lot of traffic in front, and he was just able to track it effortlessly. Part of that is the height and the size that he has, but also just, especially moving side to side through traffic. He was on his game, and that was a big reason for the Leafs win in that one. He definitely hung in there with Joey Daccord as both goalies battled really well, and the Kraken didn't put a ton of grade A chances on him, but when they did, he was on top of it. Made some really nice glove saves too. Got to hand it to him. Kraken Queen was hoping for Bjorky to get the Gordie Howe hat trick. He was on Gordie Howe hat trick watch. We were all paying attention for it. Excuse me. But just, unfortunately, couldn't add the goal there to get it. It would have been cool. As they're coming back, right, to get a goal, would have been a big goal in the game. It'll happen one day. I don't think anyone had Bjorkstrand picked to be the guy, though, so it might be somebody else. Sean, both teams were sloppy. Really, I thought the Leafs were merely going through the motions and won fairly easily, 3-1. I don't think we saw, I don't think we saw a ton of desperation from the Leafs, but it wasn't really necessary in this one. And especially as the game kind of went on later, I think they were just focused on playing solid defensively, staying in their spots, as you know, would think a Berube coach team would do. And I think that's kind of what we saw. Let's see. Oh, we've got some more super chats here. Sorry, I got to scroll back up in chat. Sorry if I've let's go. Where is it? Where is it? Here we go. All right. From Becca, RJ, get that cough medicine behind the counter that actually works. I know. So what it is, I was talking too much during the game, like to Dylan, everyone, and it's loud. You kind of have to talk over people. And my throat is still, you know, a little sensitive from when I lost my voice. I mean, we had to push the podcast back a little bit last week because, you know, I lost my voice and I was sick. And so now I'm like feeling largely better, but throat's just still a little sensitive, I guess. And really coming up here. I don't have to like talk continuously, you know, that much through the game. So I was able to just take a little break on my voice, but yeah, I'll I'll take care of myself for sure. And hopefully Dylan will join us sooner rather than later and take a little bit of the load off my voice. I think you'll find that when Dylan joins us, I can just take a minute in between his answers. I'll be totally fine. But super chat here from Elizabeth 05 and 2. I am sorry, Elizabeth. That is a rough record attending Kraken games, especially coming from so far. I mean, on the positive side, it was really great to see you again at intermission and talk to so many people too. But you'll get a win. You'll get a win someday. I promise, Elizabeth. Just keep at it. But yeah, rough stretch, unfortunately there. But you know, stick with it. We'll get you in. I mean, of course, going back to like Tank Commander Ty, who I think lost his first, it was like 17, 18 games that he went to. So you haven't set the record quite yet, but hopefully you'll never get close to that. Let's see. Super chat here from Edward. ESPN errors saying players' names. That's a really good one. I don't know if I've seen that one before, and I've seen a lot of those like kind of joke abbreviations for ESPN, but that's a good one. Certainly fitting tonight. Maddie, we may not have won, but RJ, you should get some lemon lime Gatorade. I really should. I should have grabbed some lemon lime Gator. Like I know Dylan probably had one on him, and yeah, I should probably have grabbed like a cup of water or something. But I got rid of mine in the second period. So can Amanda drink the Gatorade since Dylan doesn't need it? Sorry, too dark. I mean, I would kind of steal it at this point if I could, and just have some, just to make it a better presentation for all you guys. Sorry you got to deal with the voice and the coughing and all of that stuff, but thanks for bearing with me here. Let's see. Scrolling back up in chat. Where were we? Yeah, fun fact, Stolars is 6'6". Goodness, yeah, he's a big boy. Luke, the whole thing is an ouch at the minute. First time I've heard the fans turn tonight when Stevenson held that puck on the last power play. It really isn't good enough right now. Too many passengers. There were a lot of fans yelling shoot, as happens when you've got, you're in the final minute or so, you've got the power play. But yeah, I think that's kind of just more of a common hockey thing where they're yelling at him to shoot. But I do think there were some fans that, weren't too happy with how the power play was going. Julia, I hope that all of them, besides Kako, have a nice vacation booked. Yeah, me too. I think the guys could use it. And then, of course, we know where Capo Kako is going. He's to the Four Nations tournament. So Dylan, get that man some Gatorade. Yeah, I'm sorry if this is kind of taking over the chat here. I'm trying to hang in there. I think really I just need Dylan to take a minute. I don't see him yet, but hopefully we'll get some answers from Dylan soon. See, Terrible Lotus, please make us feel better after that broadcast. I'm trying. I'm doing what I can here. Freddie, James Higgins, baby. Yeah, I mean, let's check Tankathon. Where are they? They still top 4? Yeah, they're still at 4 here. They're well ahead of Buffalo now, points percentage, because Buffalo keeps winning games. So Kraken keeping pace. I mean, at this rate, 9.5% odds for the first overall pick. So that's not nothing. I mean, that's better than the playoff odds at this point. So I think coming back from the break, we might kind of just for the losses do a little sidebar of okay, where are they as far as draft position? because that's, chances to players that could help turn things around. AutoCAD, I'm 1,000 times more frustrated with ESPN than I am with the boys. Just insufferable broadcast. I mean, you know what? That's if you're frustrated by just kind of everything, the game, the broadcast. Like the broadcast is a good place to start. Man, so much stuff about the broadcast. Let's see. Wow, lots of stuff on the broadcast. I'm scrolling through, just trying to find something else here. From this one from Dufferman, are we ever going to get a review to go? I mean, the reviews, they do even out. The Kraken have benefited from some reviews earlier on this season. It's just one of those things that kind of even out over the course of a season and years and all that. As for that one though, did the broadcast ever show an angle that really that wasn't just that one from above and behind the net? Because they kept showing that one, and that one you can't tell. You can't tell if that stick was over the crossbar or not. I still have not seen an angle that really gives me any kind of indication on that. And if anyone else has seen another angle, let me know. But yeah, I don't know. And the super chat here from Sean. Yeah, Byron, every angle was useless. That's what I thought. I didn't see a good angle, so I certainly can't complain about that call going against the Kraken, because I didn't see an angle that showed that it was a high stick. I didn't see any kind of helpful angle, and so call on the ice has to stand. So I can't be disappointed about that one. Like it's, I can't complain about it. Try whispering, says Maddie. Okay. Let's see if that helps. No, I don't like how that sounds. I don't think anyone needs that. So super chatter from Sean, Ricola donation. Yeah, thank you for that. Let's see if I have a cough drop in my backpack. I packed him a couple games ago. If you'll all bear with me here. I bet I took him out, didn't I? Yep. I think I took him out of my backpack. I have a whole bunch of Bavarian meats from our buddy Charles. Whole bag of jerkies and various cured meats. But no cough drops. No cough drops. Oh, you know what I do have? If I can find it. ASMR post game. I don't think anybody wants that from me. Maybe Dylan could do that well, but not for me. You guys don't want that. I do have buried in here somewhere a packet of honey. If I can find it among all the ECH pins, then I think it would help. But I don't know that I can. So I'm just going to read from the bottom of chat here. Whispering is supposed to be bad for lost voices. Okay, well then I will not whisper. MH going to the Four Nations final, hoping Finland makes it. That would be awesome. I'm rooting for Finland in that tournament. I just root for them in all the international stuff. So that is great. But awesome that you are getting to go to the final. That's going to be super fun. And go Finland and Capo Caco. Yeah, I'm not finding this packet of honey with one hand. Just got to hope Dylan is ready to bail me out. And there he is. Yes. Just in time, Dylan. Don't stab yourself on the pins, RJ. Actually, that's good advice, B. Yeah, careful. Make sure to keep your honey packets right next to your pins. Maybe that's not the wisest. All right, we got Dylan.
What did I walk into?
What? Disaster, Dylan. I'm sorry.
Right as I turned it on, it's just, there's Dylan to bail me out. I'm like, all right, cool, I guess.
Yes, but you are here to bail me out because my voice, I couldn't. My throat's too irritated. I was kind of coughing, just trying to clear my throat here. So I need you to back me up for a little bit. I'm fine. Okay. I just need a minute every now and then to regroup. And so everybody was there supporting me on the struggles. You see the last super chat even was a donation for some cough drops. So appreciate everyone who's helped me out. But Dylan, allow me to stop talking. What was the vibe like in the room? I mean, how was it hearing from the players, from Dan? Anything stand out to you after another loss?
All right. So vibe-wise, because I do think that is interesting. Look, player stuff, normal, what you'd expect after a loss. We've obviously gotten quite a few of those this year. It almost feels like some of the sting might just be leaving just because they have happened so much. I talked to Oliver Bjorkstrand first. talked about it being his 600th game. Obviously, he's happy of that milestone and proud of it, as he should be. Asked about, did he ever think that for his 600th game he would be, celebrating that with a fight? He said no. He kind of laughed at that one. He said no. He said if anybody was to, bet on something like that, they would have gotten some pretty good odds and hopefully made some money tonight. Tolvanen,
man, Bjorkstrand really leaning into the NHL, getting all that extra money for gambling here.
It's how they're getting it, because it sure isn't from television ratings, as you and I were talking about on the press bridge earlier. So get that from Oliver Bjorkstrand. Then we get into Eeli Tolvanen. Tolvanen kind of asked about, the struggles offensively for this team. Obviously, he has not been struggling, but just the overall team struggles in the offensive zone. Are they just not getting their looks? Are they, what's kind of going on? Eeli Tolvanen feels like they are getting their looks. It's just for, different circumstances, kind of game by game, things have just kind of gone wrong for them. And that's why they just haven't really been able to put the puck in the net. Was appreciative of the screen that Fleury was able to give him for his goal and just kind of driving the defense, clearing out that lane. And he said he was able to see it the whole way, the opening, that he was able to score on Stolarz there. So that was kind of interesting to hear from him, just his perspective on that. I always like when the players are able to talk about that. And then we go in for Dan's presser. And this is where I think the vibes thing becomes an interesting question, because Dan sits down. It's obviously a pretty, somber, I guess is the word to use. You've been in that room plenty of times when
I know what you're talking about.
And gets two questions and then it was shut down.
Two questions in, it was shut down.
That was just it. Yeah, Dan didn't shut it down. Team shut it down, but that was it. And
what was the second question?
So the second question was just about how the team started and if he liked the start of the game for the team and kind of like that. And he said, if we're talking the first 5 minutes, yeah, I liked it. I thought we got some chances there and we were able to start the game. And then there was kind of a follow up to that, which was, what about like the first 20? What about the first half of the game? And he kind of said like, well, I thought we had some chances. And then just kind of gave like not much of an answer, right? Didn't really go through it, and that was it. So look,
I don't think I've seen that before. Two questions of the coach.
I was gonna say it was extremely fast. Like once we got Dan, it was extremely fast, and it was just in and out. And look, I think it's a reasonable question to ask, right? We've been talking about this. I mean, we've had 10,000 comments probably at this point over the course of the year about the team starting slow, about that being a pretty consistent struggle for them. Why is it that they constantly find themselves in holes like the one that they find themselves in at the end of the first period here? It is getting to the point, and even I was like sitting there trying to think about it, about how to ask the question in a way that it doesn't sound like you're totally coming after them or something, but like right. At some point it does feel like the question needs to be asked of why is this still such a consistent problem? Like, where is the breakdown? Is it does I would love his opinion on, does he feel like it's an issue on their end about not being able to address what's really kind of been so prevalent as an issue for them to start games and address that and identify it and then address it from their side of things? Is it a player thing, right? Obviously, I don't expect the coach to ever throw their team under the bus. So I don't, you know what I mean? Like, it's one of those, like, I feel like you'd ask the question and they just talk around it and away from it. But it feels like everybody's just kind of there. And again, outside of just the fact that you're not really going to get an answer, it feels like everybody's kind of got that question on their minds, because it's really the only question left at this point. Like, we know, okay, they're not going to be a playoff team. Okay, they're not always going to be able to hang with some of the playoff teams in this league. We kind of vaguely know where they are from a skill standpoint, but this is a very specific issue, and it's been so prevalent and so consistent for months now, right? I mean, we're into February. Right, we're over 50 games into the season, I feel like it's a reasonable question to be like, why is this still an issue? Like what is the problem that's leading this to consistently still be an issue?
Yeah, I think it is a very reason. I think it's really, again, like you said, it's the question on everybody's minds. Like, why does this continue to happen? And it's hard to almost phrase in a question because, like, you just kind of say, like, this
Right.
that's going on. The poor starts, but it's execution. It's all these things that, as Ellie Tolvanen said, a few games ago, well, it's all the same questions were being asked every single game. Why does that continue to happen? And I think it's kind of the question on everybody's minds, but it's I don't know. I mean, and now we've got, as far as people talking about the coaching, Alan says, it's a little concerning. Luke says, never good. It is your team. Answer the questions you're asked. If you can't take the heat that we need better. I will say, Dan will never shy away from a question. Never.
Yeah, it was not Dan who shut it down.
It wasn't Dan
at all.
Yeah,
no. It was definitely not Dan. Don't think for a second that Dan's that kind of coach
He's
or
not.
anything like that. He even said when it was, he was like, really? He literally did that audibly.
Sounds like Dan.
Went,
yeah.
Really? That's it? Okay. Like, all right, I guess. Like, he just kind of sat there like, really? Like, okay. And then got up and out of there. Now, I will say, right after that, a bunch of Toronto media flooded into the room. So I don't know if they needed the space to maybe talk to Greg Berube or something like that. Like that is very possible. And it was the question was asked like real quick beforehand. Any other questions, and people were maybe still like thinking about if they wanted to ask a question. It was done quick. So it wasn't like this was just totally, let's get out of here right away, or we don't want Coach Dan talking to you all. And like I said, it definitely wasn't Coach Dan not wanting to talk to everybody. It does. I do think, if I had to guess, I'm sure right now Greg Berube is probably sitting in that same seat right now, answering to the Toronto media that was kind of all over the place down there. Most visiting media I've ever experienced down there in the media room and in the tunnel.
Yeah, no, there were a lot, especially before the game. But then on the coaching thing, Sean saying, are we finally going to talk about the coaching? This pass has gone on too long. And I know, look, I still think it's the players. It's the group of players that's been assembled, and the coaches have tried to push every button they can. And just this is a group of players that will not respond to anything you can really do to motivate a group traditionally. But Sean bringing it back up with the coaching. And I don't think the coaching is completely blameless in this, just because you do have the same problem that's happening over and over and over again. And by the way, before you answer, and keep your answer long, because I found the honey packet. I have a packet of craft honey, so hopefully that'll help.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, that is part of it is the players, and I'm with you, just because again, we saw the same issue with most of this group last season. Like, that shouldn't be ignored. Like, there is a significant component of this that is just this player group. It really does feel that way. I 1000% believe that. Like, I believe that with every part of me, is that it is predominantly the player group. That said, I have been talking like this last week or last couple weeks that there are some things on the coaching front that do feel like they need to be addressed, that do feel like you need to have made adjustments. Or, I mean, at this point, it is too late to make some of those adjustments, but talking about things defensively, running the zone defense is not working. It has not worked all year, and it's just continuing not to work. There is no improvement there. The same mistakes that you are making now, or the same mistakes that you were making back in November, at some point, you either change your process of coaching the players, or you've got to change the system, simplify it, just get something that you can get some sort of positive result from. I think the same thing a little bit with your approach to the offensive zone or getting up the ice quickly. We know that Dan wanted to turn this into a skating team. Again, I think in theory, that is what the team should be. That's what teams in the NHL should be. That's what successful teams in the NHL should be, just like playing zone defense. Every system that Dan installed are the systems that, if you look at the final four teams in the playoffs last year, run. Like, these are the systems that work in today's NHL. Dan just didn't have the roster to do them. And at some point, it became clear that the roster was not going to be able to learn them or play them at the level that is required of them, of those systems. And like I said, that's really what I've been talking about this last little bit, is it at some point you have to get away from it, right? Until you can at least get to the off season, work with guys, go into next year's training camp, tweak the roster so that it can be better. But for whatever reason, this team is just not kind of capable of playing that style of hockey that Dan has wanted to install. And, again, we're 50 games in, like it should work, right? He talked about 20 games at the beginning of the year to build those habitual habits, to build that foundation. You've had that again, and now you're getting it even more. And those habits are still not forming, and we're not seeing that foundation.
And I see your super chat here, Jessica, about needing the sports psychiatrist from Ted Lasso. But I just, and I'll get back to it, but because Sean did another super chat here, kind of following up on his original super chat, saying, I'm not excusing the fact that these players are not good enough, but at some point when the same issues happen over and over, what is the point of the coach? I mean, come on. And I think pointing to the group of players isn't necessarily taking things away from the coach. Look, I think what needs to be done in the offseason, for the rest of the season, you're not fixing this in any meaningful way. You're not making the playoffs. I think you just have to look at it from the offseason where, okay, you have to make major changes to the group of players. The guy who assembled the group of players probably has to go. And with that, it probably means, for better or worse, whether you love the coaching staff or not, when that happens, if there's a new GM, almost always there's a new coach. And so that's probably where we're going to be at. But I mean, any insight to that, Dylan, as far as, what Sean's asking?
I mean, I think the same could be said for the players for that same thing, right? Like at some point they need to make that change and everything. And they've been under two different coaching staffs now with two different philosophies too. Like that's the other thing, is like we talked about this back when Dan got hired. I anyway really believed in his ability to connect with guys on an individual level to then get the most out of them. We saw this in Coachella Valley. Look at the work he did in Coachella Valley. Look at the transformations that guys like Ty Cartier, Logan Morrison had as undrafted players, going to him and then turning into, certainly in Ty Cartier's standpoint, like an everyday NHL player in like a year of working with him, right? Like, look at Joey Daccord and what Joey Daccord was able to become as an NHL goalie, who, by the way, had been around and in different NHL organizations and had not turned into this. He plays under Coach Dan Bylsma. He turns into this, right? We've seen this with Shane Wright, Ryan Winterton. All of these players have changed for the better, playing for Dan Bylsma down in Coachella Valley because of Dan's approach to coaching and his ability to connect with players on a personal level. I can't imagine, I won't say I refuse to believe, but I can't imagine that he would have drastically changed that approach to trying to connect with his players when becoming the head coach of this team. I think there is maybe a little bit of a different dynamic. If you're in the AHL, there is more of a focus on development. There's maybe more of an unspoken understanding that the coach is there to develop you, that you are trying to get better, that your mindset is that of which you want to learn and improve on your game, and you're going to take constructive criticism so that you can then go to the NHL and fulfill your dream. Whereas in the NHL, maybe that doesn't exist as much because you're a pro, you've made it, you're already on your big contract, you've earned that. Maybe there isn't that same, mindset from the players in the room. It's just one of those things where I don't know why it didn't work. Like, everything on paper about Dan Bylsma should have meant that this team is in a better spot now than they are, right? That they should have turned into a better team than last year. It's a better roster on paper. It's a coach I believe in more just from how he communicates to his players. There's systems that I think are the right systems for the NHL and that you can be successful with in the NHL. This is not a coach coming in and experimenting and the experiment has gone wrong. And it just hasn't worked. And I am at a loss as to why it hasn't worked. I think blame falls on both sides for all the reasons I've already said on this post game. It's just one of those things where I'm just at a loss for an answer.
I kind of am too. And I mean, Amanda's saying, it seems like Dan's work is effective with younger players and isn't hitting much with the prime older age players as much. And I would point to that as a logical reason that maybe, the communication wouldn't be as effective. But you had Dave Hackstall, where he was the kind of guy who was going to connect with the guys who are, late 20s, early 30s, right? The real core of this team. And they didn't get the message under him either. So I just don't know. And I mean, and Sean saying the GM is the problem. I get that, had that last season, but if the system doesn't work with the players, you do not have to tweak it a little bit. And that's exactly what you've talked about, Dylan, is on the podcast, they do need to tweak things a little bit and simplify things. And so, there is that as well, but maybe that happens over the Four Nations break. As I'm seeing lots and lots of comments here on the coaching conversation. I don't know if there's any that you've kind of seen scroll through here that you wanted to address, because there's just a lot of different facets of it.
Yeah, I mean, there was somebody who had asked about like what changes in the defensive zone if you're going away from the zone defense. It was back here. It's from Zach. When you talk about trying other defensive systems, do you mean a box and one, man to man, and overload are not really easier to pull off? Yeah, I mean, I literally just collapse in. Like, yeah, you could basically do like a box plus one, like just collapse in, take away the middle of the ice, force other teams to the perimeter. I said it that earlier that day on the podcast, and then they did that in that Edmonton game. Like, they obviously knew the passing lanes on the perimeter that Edmonton wanted to use. They took away the middle. They forced Edmonton to the perimeter. They knew those passing lanes that they wanted. They made sure that they timed their chances to step up into those passing lanes. We saw the Kraken able to, counterattack in transition in that game in a way that we just have not seen in any other game this season. There were so many positives from that change defensively in Edmonton. And then we haven't seen it since. It's been 4 games since that one?
Yeah.
Just gone. Doesn't exist. It's like that thing never happened. Like, that's like, you did it. You made the adjustment. It looked good. You were within a goal with Edmonton in Connor McDavid's return from suspension, right? Like, that's a game that, you're not a better team than Edmonton. You're not going to win that game, but damn, you looked competitive against Edmonton. You bring that effort against teams, including the Leafs tonight, or Calgary, or any of the teams that they've played, Detroit. You're winning some of those games. That's the kind of stuff that they need to do. It's again, just super simplify things on both ends. Don't worry about trying to attack in transition. Just worry about getting your timing down, entering the offensive zone, right? Like I highlighted this last podcast. Just get consistent, controlled zone entries. That's the level that this thing needs to get simplified down to, because that's what this team is struggling with, is the simple stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Simplify things. And Mark saying, so what did McClellan do to turn the Red Wings season around? And I think simplifying things is a lot of what he did, especially defensively, where, you see, they kind of run a more simple defensive system, right?
Yeah.
Where it's more boring, it's not as fun to play, but everyone knows where they need to be. And then their goals against has gotten a lot better since he took over. And I think that's part of it. And then, of course, they do have the skilled forwards that can produce, and a Lucas Raymond, a Dylan Larkin, Alex DeBrincat, that the Kraken just don't have. And when you have both of those things, there's at least the potential to kind of turn stuff around if you simplify.
Yeah, I mean, I look at Detroit, I look at Toronto tonight, just having players that understand where gaps in defenses are, and then they can set up there. Like, that's just so much of it. The Kraken just don't really do that all that often. And you know what? When they do, that's when we see a lot of goals. Like, a lot of the goals that we've seen from that Matty Beniers line since Capo Caco has joined it with Jaden Schwartz, it's just been guys finding openings and then the other players picking their head up, seeing them, and giving them the puck. Like, it's not like they're doing anything that's really, a system. They're not doing set plays. These are not things that are, diagrammed out ahead of time, and then they go out there and then they execute it. It's like watching Capo Caco behind the net, right? We talked about that up on the press bridge in this one. You could look at the last couple games. Capo Caco from back behind the net just picks his head up. He just looks at the offensive zone. He sees where guys are. And Matty Beniers and Jaden Schwartz have done a good job of finding those open spots where he can then make a play over to them, right? That's why I think Capo Caco has looked so good as a playmaker. It's just because he's literally just taking what the defense is giving him. You can do that, right? Simplify things down a little bit. These guys are all talented. They should all be able to do that. They're in the NHL for a reason. And I just think that's it. That's literally all you need to do. Look, it's not going to maybe get you to a playoffs or make you a top team in your division or anything, but I don't know. I mean, look, offensively they're above average. So in as terms of goals scored this year, so maybe it's not even something that really needs to change that much. But defensively, things absolutely need to change because you are, bottom of the barrel defensively as far as goals against, and then obviously all of the advanced analytics agree with that. You're a bottom 4 team in like any way you slice it defensively. That definitely has needed to be addressed, and it just doesn't feel like it has been.
Yeah, I agree with that. I hope we'll see some changes over the Four Nations break. I feel like we have to, but I just don't trust this group of players to kind of get that buy-in for longer than a game or two. We might see the first game back, they look a lot better.
And certainly not this late into a season.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If your playoff chances are 1%, you buying into wholesale changes and really putting in that work? Like, I don't know. I would hope so. I'm not saying
and with basically nothing left to play for too. I mean, the players, you're going to go on vacation and you're going to really take stock of, look, season's over effectively, unless you get traded out of here. Like again, it's really hard to motivate guys when that's the case.
Yeah, I would hope so, but after last year, who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. And if IRN just change the coaches fire the coach once a month, make sure the new guys are as dissimilar as possible, maximum instability. Hockey's the one sport where it might work. Maybe not for the Kraken, but it might work somewhere.
Literally, it could. And look, so much of it, you talk about it with Todd McClellan and him simplifying things defensively. We talk about this every year. When there's going to be 2 or 3 teams that fire their coach midseason, new coach comes in, instantly turns it around, at least in the short term. Doesn't always last because, again, some teams are just bad. Like, there's no way around that. But they always turn it around in the short term. And that's because every single one of them just simplifies things. Like, they just simplify it because they're brand new and they can't install a system overnight, right? If you're coming in mid-season, it takes time. You have to slowly work and build that up. There's a reason why coaching hires in the off season, really that training camp is so important for them, because it is about that work day in, day out, trying to build that muscle memory into players as for where they need to be in the offensive or defensive zone, or when they're attacking in transition, all of that kind of stuff. Anytime we see that instant success of coaching changes mid-season, it always comes from simplification. I would love to see a coach try that in the regular season on their own, not needing to get fired with their team. Just 20 games into the season, things aren't working. Just simplify it. Just tear it down, simplify things, and then try to build it back up, maybe in a slightly different way, or make whatever adjustments you feel like need to be made. I would love for a coach to do that. They never will, because it would be admitting failure, and I don't know how that would go over in a locker room either. But it feels like something that a coach should try just at some point, right?
And Viren's responses are making me smile here. So systems are bad, chemistry is fake, just don't have a coach. I think you see these turnarounds. Obviously, we're not saying that. I think systems and chemistry are very, very powerful. But in these situations where coaches get fired, it's usually because the systems aren't working, and so simplification is good. When systems work great and you have chemistry and you have guys that have years of experience in detailed systems, that works great, and usually that means the coach isn't getting fired mid-season. Like, those are the teams that are successful. So it's that kind of sample that you get. Also, I think there's an element of when you make a coaching change mid-season, in most situations, a lot of the players also feel like, man, I was kind of sick of playing for that guy, and so you bring someone else new in. I think that just kind of gives everybody a jolt. Which kind of adds to the simplification. And you know what? I don't think that was the case with Dave Haxtell and the Kraken. Like, I don't think the players were like, oh, I'm sick of playing for that guy. I think they're like, well, yeah, I don't know what we're supposed to do, and I don't know what the answer is, and I'm tired of losing. But I don't think they disliked it.
No, but that other aspect is very important, and not something that you want players to be saying. And if you're management, you have to make a change if players are saying that kind of stuff. But basically, like, if you use the side, this big middle divider between us here, RJ, right, as like a scale, and you have like top tier, this is the best of what you can do up here at the top. This is Stanley Cup championship teams. This is Paul Maurice's Florida Panthers up here from a chemistry and systems standpoint. And then down here at the bottom is, all like the really bad disasters that exist from a coaching standpoint. This is, Mike Babcock trying to come in and coach any team in this decade, right?
Yeah.
What you'll find is when you play a simplified game, you exist in here. You're never going to be that bad. You're never going to descend into like Chicago, San Jose territory, or even some of the territory that the Kraken now operate in. You're going to be right around the middle because there is a very safe floor that safe systems provide for you, but you're never gonna elevate past anything either, right? Like there is an obvious cap. You could maybe be a playoff team if you play simplified systems and you just have so chemistry and you kind of do all that stuff. You could maybe squeak into the playoffs, but you're just going to get bounced in the first round by a team that does have these upper tier systems and players that are comfortable in them and understand it and have that chemistry with each other. So it's one of those things where I feel like if you are one of these teams down here at the bottom, go ahead and simplify things. Bring yourself back up to that safe middle ground. Yes, you're not going to go all the way from the bottom to the top, but guess what? You're not going to anyway. There's a reason you're at the bottom, right? At least try to make yourself mid consistently. Like that can be the goal for a season. And then next year you try to go above that and you try to install those systems again. You make the tweaks you need to, you change the roster as you need to, if that was the issue that was keeping things from working out, and you get up here. But this is fine if you're one of these teams. And I feel like the Kraken, that's been the disconnect. The Kraken have ended up one of these teams. I think they've thought they've been in here the whole time, but they're really down here. And at some point they have to understand that and make the changes necessary to actually get up here, and then make the roster changes that are going, that clearly need to be made, and all of those other things, so that then they could kind of try again to install systems and start climbing that competitive ladder. But right now they're at the bottom, and it feels like not everybody within the organization agrees that they're at the bottom, and that's holding them back.
Right, because I think this is a team that just simply does not have enough talent to run the kind of complex systems necessary to get where they ultimately want to go, and that just needs to change. And that's again on the GM that's assembled that group of players, and then on the group of players that can't run them and also seem kind of immune to motivation. But Blue White Flame asking, and we've seen some follow-ups here, could the problem be higher than the GM position in the front office? And it certainly could be, if ownership is kind of meddling, and, we'll never know. Again, we'll never know really the extent of it. It could be, but if, either way, I think ownership entrusts somebody to make key decisions, and, judging by the results, they may have entrusted the wrong person.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think it's necessarily above that. I think,
I don't think it is either.
Right. I think they've just made moves and it just hasn't worked. Right. And that happens sometimes. Like you can make trades and sign free agents with the best of intentions, and then it doesn't work out. It just happens. Right. Like that is just reality. It happens about as much as the teams that it does work out for. Like there's a reason that there is half the league that doesn't look very competitive, and then other teams that do look very competitive. It's not always just because some teams have best practices and other teams really struggle in that. Sometimes you're just unlucky, and you never know how guys are going to click and play with each other, and what locker room chemistry is going to get spat out when you throw a random collection of players together. And that's essentially what this team was, because it was an expansion team. This was you know what I mean? Like from a locker room culture standpoint, I don't know that this was ever constructed the way you kind of do with other groups, where it's like, okay, here's our star, here's the player we're building around. Let's go with the style of running a locker room, the style of coaching, all of that kind of stuff that works for them. Right? Like that's kind of the traditional approach. This was a team of NHL veterans all coming together for the first time, and everybody trying to figure out what the chemistry and culture of the group was going to be. And I just think that there's been a lot of road bumps along that way. It was never like, okay, we're changing the culture, and the culture is we're supporting Connor Bedard or Macklin Celebrini or anything like that, right? Like that wasn't kind of how this team has operated. And I just think that that's been an issue for them.
Yeah, no, I think so. And Amanda's saying, I think we need Monty with the super chat, by the way. Thank you, Amanda, for the super chat. I think we need Monty to run a special skills team called Team Vibes. And it does feel a little bit like, I mean, especially seeing Brandon Montour signed this offseason, kind of going from that Panthers culture and getting kind of thrown into this Kraken culture. And it feels like he's tried as hard as he can to kind of drag everything toward what he was used to in Florida, but just there's just a critical mass of players. I think that, one guy can't just fix the whole culture. I think we've learned that.
Right. And I see this from Brooke. Why have the Kraken never had a culture or identity? I think it's because, like I said, it's just been a random collection of players and it just never got sussed out. And like I said, it's something that the team usually builds around an incoming player that kind of sets a new era for the franchise. Like, I think of all of the teams, and that's one of those things that you do is you either build it around an incoming player or you build it around an incoming coach. And I really do think that this team tried to build it around Dan Bylsma, RJ, and I just don't feel like I feel like there was still some of the issues lingering and left over from the offseason. And we've kind of heard this brought up from time to time, right? Obviously, there was the Elliot Friedman report from like a month ago about Dan maybe wasn't on board with, Ron wasn't maybe on board with Dan. He wanted to keep Hack, right? All of that kind of stuff. It never has felt like the organization has been 100% behind one individual and trying to build the organization around one individual, whether it's a coach, which some teams have done, and it's worked very well for them, right? I think of the culture change in Florida. That was not like them building around Sam Reinhart coming in as a free agent. That was them building around Paul Maurice and saying, we're going to make a culture that fits around this man who is going to then lead our team and establish everything from here on out. And the whole organization got behind that idea and they went with it. I feel like that's kind of what the Kraken tried to do, but it doesn't feel like it either worked or that there was enough of that push to go with it. I don't think that Maddie or Shane have been players that they have been able to do that for either. I think, again, the nature of Maddie coming in for 10 games at the end of an expansion season that didn't go well, and it's all coming out of COVID and all of that kind of stuff. Maddie got thrown into that locker room, and it was never like, wow, the identity of this team is we're building around the player we took second overall, right? And then you go into that draft, you get Shane Wright. Shane Wright has taken a little while to get here. It's never been, we're going to build around Shane Wright. And so I just think at some point they're going to need to either find that player or coach that the entire organization is going to get behind and say, this is our identity now. It's what this person brings.
Right. It's been so rare in the, those 4 seasons this team has had where you could ask the question, okay, what is Kraken hockey? How are the Kraken playing when they are playing well, right? What type of game do they want to play when they're going to be successful? Now, there have been times where there's been an answer to that question for maybe a month, or it's changed, right? And they kind of flip-flopped on it, but they've never really, as you said, had a full identity like that for a full season where everybody knows this is what they want to do to be successful. The closest they came, I guess, was year 2 when really it was kind of depth scoring, right? That's our identity. It's the depth guys that it's Daniel Sprong, Morgan Geekie, Ryan Donato. They're going to put in a goal every other game at least, and they're going to keep you on your heels, right? They're going to be dangerous. That was, I guess, the closest thing that they have really was the depth forwards, right? Yeah. And of course, after that season, they get rid of those guys. If for better or worse, like I'm not saying they should have kept them. We're not going to relitigate that, but for better or worse, they got rid of those guys. And so that identity went away as well. And you're right. They just haven't had one. And then Amanda's saying, seems like Berkeley will be who we need to build around then. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily Shane or Maddie quite yet as one of the, like we're building around this one guy, we're supporting this one guy.
And you missed your window with it too.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, Maddie as a year 5 vet, let's everybody now has to kind of fall in line with him. Like, it doesn't work. Like, you can't.
No, it doesn't. So that's kind of the hope really is either, a Berkeley Catton or potentially even whoever you get in the draft this year and kind of those two guys combined.
You win the lottery this year or something. You pick first or second and you get like a Schaefer or a Hagens. It gives you something to work with from that standpoint. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so maybe that's the kind of thing this team needs. And it's, worth considering after another loss that I think, maybe has us all a little bit, kind of disappointed, frustrated with the general state of things, that the fact they didn't get 2 points tonight, that's one little step closer to maybe kind of having that identity to build around.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess their identity right now is seed a bunch of goals in the first period.
But yeah, that's an
play
identity,
better,
yeah.
play better later, but not play well enough, right? Like that is kind of the thing. But it is. Oh, I mean, there's so much, and like I said, there are questions that I wish could be asked, but I don't know that they're feasible to ask. I don't think you actually get an answer from. I think there's a lot of questions also that are just never going to be answered because the answers lie behind the walls of the team offices, and we'll just never know the conversations that kind of took place that got us here. But I think there's an element of just unfortunate luck, bad luck. Free agent moves just haven't worked. Guys still from the expansion draft as coming in to be your core just hasn't worked. Stuff like that. I think as you get the attrition of some of the vets out of there and more young players come in, I think at some point, yes, whether it's a Berkeley Cat and whoever you draft this year, one of them will be the guy, and then you can build around them, and everything else should fall into place. Like that's generally how this works. So it's one of those situations that is like sort of easily fixed. It's just not one that you could do anything about right now, and that's just kind of a tough present that we have to exist in.
Yeah, exactly. And then I guess I just see one more large conversation kind of going on in here. And by the way, thank you everyone being so active in chat. There are so many different directions we could go with. A lot of great comments that I'm seeing as we're kind of reading and talking, and stuff we can probably address in more detail on podcasts and things like that. Because there's just so many good questions in here that we really don't have the time to answer in depth. But it's the whole captain thing, and I that was brought up. It should Montour have been captain, and I know that's kind of who I was maybe advocating for at the start of the season. But I think he still would have been like a good choice. I don't think he would have fixed the issues that the Kraken are facing now. It is much bigger than that. And I think Eberle did a great job in the time that he was captain, just got really unlucky with the injury. Like, I think it was a solid choice, a good choice for captain, but it did a bad, mid-body injury, and that all goes out the window, and you can't plan for that.
Yeah, no, I mean, we'll never know. Like in the alternate universe where Jordan Eberle doesn't get hurt, what happens, right? Do they have as disastrous a December as they have? It's very possible they don't, right? If not probable. But that
I wouldn't go as far as probable, but it's certainly possible.
I think they would. I don't think it would be good, but I think it would be better than what they had. Like I think
it would be better than this.
That's all I was saying. That's all I was saying.
But they wouldn't be in it.
No, they wouldn't be in it. Like again, there are bigger issues, but I do think that him being around as that presence would have made a difference, and they would have done better. There was one that I was gonna say, and then it moved. Maddie, I don't know if blue line scoring is a viable identity. I think for reasons that we talked about on the pod, it's probably not. Just because one, it's not a reliable scoring well that you can continually tap all of the time, just for many reasons, and also it just means your forwards are not producing, and that's a problem. that's like literally their job.
It is. So I know. I think that is certainly an issue. So yeah, I think, I don't know. I see there's still, again, just lots of stuff that conversations that we continue to happen over the course of the season. And what I think that's as heated as it can get a little bit. I think that's actually a good thing. We've still got stuff to talk about, and that I feel like the sense of ennui that was mentioned earlier here in the post game, and the apathy, that's kind of the enemy. As long as we all still care. There'll always be stuff to talk about. But as we're over the hour mark, and I do want to thank our sponsor, Queen Anne Beer Hall, one more time. New location, the Hall in Occidental, opening up in May. And I even have a little mock-up here. You can see all what the front's going to look like. And some of you may remember that like iconic brick building right across the street from T-Mobile Park. It's going to be awesome. There's a little rendering of the patio. It's going to be a great location. But thank you, everybody, for joining us for this post-game live. Thank you all for bearing with me as my throat was failing me there earlier on in the stream. The honey helped a lot, but you guys helped even more. So appreciate that. And one more game till the Four Nations break road game against Calgary. And we will see you all after that one.